Hey guys, how are you doing? Let's get back to the topic of costs of a firm that you have to face when you're running a business. So in the previous couple of videos, you should be very clear on the differences between AFC, what average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost means, and how you graph them, and why they take the shapes they do. So this video, if you have any doubts on that, in this video I'm going to do a very detailed example of going from production function, which is the relationship between labor and labor and output. Then we're going to derive each of these costs and see why AVC and ATC and MC take the shapes they do. Right? So I want you to see the links between this and this. So this whole video is going to be, there's no new concepts you're going to learn here, but we're going to do a thorough example and look at all those relationships so you can also then be able to do it on your own. So let's assume that fixed costs are 100. So this firm faces fixed costs of 100. And then the amount you pay labor, which is a variable cost, which is in wages. So labor is what's changing for me. So the wage rate we pay each person is $200. So given that information, let's start building this out. The only reason this is blacked out is because I've done some of the calculations in advance and I don't want you to see things you're not supposed to see yet. So MPL is change in output divided by change in labor. So when we go from hiring 0 to 1 worker, they produce 10 extra units. When we go from hiring 1 to 2 persons or people, you go from 10 to 25. So the second worker by themselves are contributing 15 units to this output process. Similarly, when you go from 2 to 3, the extra output is 10, and then 3 to 4, the extra output is 5. So you can see that this firm is experiencing increasing marginal product of labor, or the fact that each person is being more productive up till the second worker, and then after that they are producing more. 3 people produce more than 2 people and 4 people produce more than 3, but the extra amount they produce goes down. All right, so make sure you see that link. Fixed costs, you know, whether you produce 0 units or you produce 1 or you produce 4 are going to be the same. So this doesn't change, which means AFC should be very easy to derive as well. Variable cost is going to be based on how many people you're hiring. So if you hire 0 people, obviously your variable costs are going to be 0. If you're hiring 1 person, you have to pay them 200. If you're hiring 2 people, you have to pay them 200 each, so that's 400. If you're hiring 3 people, again 600, and if you're hiring 4 people, you're paying 800. So make sure you're doing this example all at the same time I'm doing them, because you need to understand it. I know it, so it makes sense when I'm doing it, but you need to be able to do it on an exam yourself as well. So follow these step by step. All right, so I'm going to, 1 second. All right, so don't look at all of that information at the same time. Let's graph AFC. Let's look at AFC first. So AFC, we know all these are not defined for 0 because anything divided by 0 is not defined. So average fixed cost when we produce 10 units of output is 100 divided by 10. So when we're looking at costs, we're looking at the relationship between how much we are producing and what the costs are. When we're looking at MPL, we're looking at the relationship between inputs and output. So make sure you keep the two separate. All right. This column we get by looking at the relationship between these two. The remaining column we get at by looking at the relationship between output and the costs that you have to incur. So when you're producing 25 units, your average fixed cost is 100 divided by 25. And when you're producing 40 units, your average cost is 100 divided by 40. Right? So you see that AFC starts off high and then it continuously goes down. So it takes a shape where it goes down and gets closer and closer to x-axis, but never really touches it. AVC is just variable cost divided by quantity. So 200 divided by 10 gives you 20. 400 divided by 25, and then 800 divided by 40 gives you 20 as well. All right, so you're just dividing up variable cost, which goes up as you hire more labor, divided by quantity. So what you see is that AVC declines for some level of output, and then it starts to increase. And it's not a coincidence that the level of output that AVC is declining for is the same output where this firm is experiencing increasing marginal product of labor. And that's the link that I want you to see, is that when the firm experiences increasing marginal product of labor, their average costs are going to be declining. And as soon as they start to experience diminishing marginal product of labor, their costs are going to start to rise. Their average variable cost is going to start to rise. And then ATC is just adding up. You can get ATC 2 ways. Either you add up AVC and AFC, or you take total cost, which is FC plus VC, and divide that by quantity. So you can see ATC goes down and then it goes up as well. Because AFC is very high, it goes down, which pulls ATC down. But then eventually AVC starts to rise, so ATC gets pulled up as well. And then marginal cost is a change in variable cost divided by change in quantity. It's also change in total cost divided by change in quantity. Again, you should know that from before. And you can see that variable cost goes from 0 to 200, output goes from 0 to 10. So MC, when you go from producing 0 to 10 units, is 200 divided by 10, so it's 20. It is, 200 divided by 15, and then 200 divided by 10, and then 200 divided by 5, which gives you 40. Right? So for each of the quantities that we are producing, we should be able to get a corresponding number for MC. And again, if you look at MC, it goes down, and for the same reason as AVC went down, and at the same level of output where the firm is experiencing increasing marginal product of labor, and then it starts to rise. So it's very important you understand, when you're hiring people, when you're running a bakery and you're hiring people, you have to know how productive they are being, because your costs are going to be dependent on that. So these two relationships will tell you how output is related to all of your costs. Because you want to be a successful businessman, so you make sure that you understand what shapes your cost curve takes. So let me just graph it out, and then we will conclude this video. So production function, if workers are being more productive, your output is going to rise quickly, and then it's going to slow down, right? So that's the point where this firm was experiencing increasing marginal product of labor and then decreasing marginal product of labor as well. Now when we take that to the average curves, we know that AFC is independent, right? That's not dependent on this at all. AVC is U-shaped. It goes down for the level of output where this firm is experiencing increasing marginal product of labor, and then it goes up for the level of output where the firm is experiencing diminishing marginal product of labor. So those two are the curves that you derived, and then ATC you just get by adding up. So for each quantity you add up what your AVC is, what your AFC is, and it gives you ATC. Again, for each level you add up what AFC is, AVC is, and it gives you ATC on the vertical axis, right? So for example, if at this quantity, I'm just going to make up a number, if at 4 output your AVC is $2 and your AFC is $1.5, now your ATC is going to be 3.5, and that's how you can just derive ATC. All right, so and then the last one is your marginal cost curve, which, and I'm going to just draw it out. We know it's U-shaped. Marginal cost curve is also going to be U-shaped, but it's going to pass through a very specific point. Don't worry about this. These 2 points where it's going through, I'm going to talk about in the next video. But for this video, again, nothing is new here. You should have known all the material. I just did a detailed example to make sure as a review for you. AFC, why it is the way it is. AVC, why it is the way it is. ATC, and then MC. Now, the relationship where MC fits in, we'll talk about and address in the next video. But for now, make sure you understand why these curves take the shapes they do. And all of this comes from how productive your labor is being. All right, so review this, and then the next time we'll put all of these curves together and look at the relationships in between them on the graph.